Yo, hold up, y'all. Hold on a second. Hold on, everybody. All right. What's up? What's going on? What's good? What's happening with y'all? That's right. We are here live. The Boxing Source here, July 28, 2024. This is the Boxing Source podcast. And you know what? I'm trying a few things here new a little bit. For this one, we're not only live on YouTube, but we're also live on Rumble. That's right. We are now live on Rumble. So, for those that are on Rumble, you know what I'm saying? You got something. If you like the whole thing with boxing content here, you know what I'm saying? You got the Boxing Source here. So YouTube, Rumble, and you know what? I think we might be on Twitch as well. You know what I'm saying? So we're live on 3 different platforms here for boxing fans to enjoy the conversation, weekly conversation here on the Boxing Source podcast. Of course, we are here every Sunday night here with the live conversation. Of course, we also have the midweek report on Wednesdays here. But for this particular podcast, of course, we have what's coming up at the BMO Stadium in Los Angeles here for, August 3rd, as we have the WBA Super Welterweight Championship fight between Terence "Bud" Crawford and Israil Madrimov. And we're going to be, having a good little preview of this particular fight here between these two combatants. Of course, you have Terence Crawford going after a world championship in his 4th weight class. Yes, he had, first held the world title there at 135 pounds with the WBO lightweight championship, became the undisputed champion in the super lightweight and welterweight divisions. And now this is his first attempt at a world title in the super welterweight division. He is there with a record of 40-0 with 31 wins by way of knockout. Of course, he's there with a height at 5'8", reach at 74. There, of course, he's had his run at the welterweight division, being able to get either KO or TKO victories over all of his opponents at welterweight, eventually becoming the undisputed welterweight champion last year. Pretty much it's been a year ago to the day that he was able to become the undisputed welterweight champion with the win over Errol Spence Jr. So now he's going up against Israil Madrimov there with a record of 10 wins, 0 losses, and 1 draw, with 7 of those wins by way of knockout. Yep, that's right. Only 11 pro fights going into this bout against Terence Crawford. He had his last bout in March of this year against Magomed Kurbanov, defeating a fighter there that was 25-0 to become the WBA Super Welterweight Champion with the TKO victory in the 5th round there. Part of that Riyadh card there, what was that? Knockout Chaos, headlined by Anthony Joshua versus Francis Ngannou. So this is his first defense of that WBA Super Welterweight Championship. He is there listed at 5'8.5" with a reach of 68.5 there. So as you see, you have a significant reach advantage there initially there for Terence "Bud" Crawford. And this is going to be interesting to see how Israil Madrimov is going to deal with that here in this bout against Terence Crawford. A number of people have talked about, this being Israil Madrimov's 12th professional fight. Of course, he's had about a whole bunch of amateur fights. He had started his amateur career back in 2011. Oh no, not even 2011. Looks like it was 2011, and it lasted 8 years. Jeez, man, eight years, man. That's crazy. Yeah, that's crazy. There, 8 years, but hey, I guess that's your boy Vasily Lomachenko, who became 2-time Olympic gold medalist or whatever it was, right? So Israil Madrimov pretty much having that extensive amateur career and then going in as a pro where he, fought Vladimir Hernandez in his first professional fight. Yeah, Vladimir Hernandez has, faced a number of notable fighters that you may have heard of, here in the past, like, J. Rock Williams, Fredo Angulo. He had fought Jesus Ramos, Chuck Simpson, Troy Isley, recently. So that is who Israil Madrimov fought in his first professional fight and was able to get a stoppage victory over Vladimir Hernandez. So he has been facing a number of fighters that have had, extensive pro experience up to this particular point. With that particular fight, with 2 fights against Michel Showro. One of them ended up being a technical draw due to a head clash or whatnot. So that ended up being his only non-win of his professional career. But like I was mentioning before, he had that performance there against Magomedov, in that knockout chaos fight card where he was able to, just beat up. He beat up Kurbanov en route to that stoppage. Like there was, not that many rounds that he ended up losing in that particular bout, in most of the judges' scorecards. So, that was a good overall performance there by Israil Madrimov. But now he's going up against Terence Crawford, a fighter that is among the top 3 in the pound-for-pound rankings. I pretty much have him at number 3 in the pound-for-pound rankings, just below, of course, Naoya Inoue and Alexander Usyk. Main reason, because, of course, this is pretty much his first fight in a year in comparison to these other fighters that, have already fought. And you're going to have Usyk fighting again in December, supposedly. And you're going to have Naoya Inoue fighting again here real soon. So you got to see Terence Crawford, how he's going to be able to do here against Israil Madrimov. Of course, the thing with Terence Crawford is he's one of the sharper offensive fighters in the game right now. Of course, he comes in there as a southpaw, but does kind of switch things up, goes from southpaw to orthodox here a little bit, and kind of like chases a game on his opponents. You've seen it, there against Kell Brook. You've seen it against Sean Porter. You've seen a little bit there against Errol Spence, although in that particular bout he really didn't have to do it that much against Errol Spence. But that gives him another element to his game. But also, as I had mentioned earlier, with his his measurements pause, he's there with the reach at 74. That makes it there as a 6 reach advantage of 6. So with him, he kind of like works off of his jab, works off distance. He kind of utilizes his skills going off of that and being a great gauge of where he's at in the ring, wherever he's at in the ring, and using that reach advantage to his benefit. So I'm going to be looking for that number 1 here in this bout against Israil Madrimov, is that how he's going to be able to keep the distance there against Madrimov in this particular bout, number 1. Number 2 is, of course, with this being the first fight that Terence Crawford has at the 154-pound division, how is he going to be able to, take, punches from Israil Madrimov? Now, the thing about it is with Terence Crawford is that, he's, great offensively. As far as like defensively, some people may say that he has, a couple of flaws here and there that he doesn't necessarily like, bob and weave or, try to do a catch and shoot or something like that. He usually would probably take a punch to give a punch, so to speak. Or, like I said, he'll pretty much have it to where he's out of range from his opponent and then be able to strike. And I think that is what he uses there as far as defense is that he uses distance to be able to gauge where his opponent is before he's able to strike. You saw that very early in his bout against Errol Spence. He had a reach advantage against Errol Spence, and he was able to utilize that in that particular bout because he was able to, use just a little bit of space just to have Errol Spence out of range. And the thing about it is that what you don't want to do against Terence Crawford is if you're out of range and you're trying to get in range, that you overreach, because you're not necessarily getting everything out of your punches, regardless if it's a jab, if it's a follow-up right hand, if you're orthodox, if it's a left hook or anything like that, because Terence Crawford is going to be standing on the square. He's not going to necessarily reach. He's not going to reach out in order to get to his opponent. He's going to be standing square, making sure that he has a good base before he even throws a punch, whether it's, the right jab, if he's coming in as a natural southpaw, just throwing a jab and he's just set. Or if he goes in with a counter left hand, you see, because he's number one, he has a great, basically a great base, so to speak. Of course, a lot of people know about his background, not just being proficient there, of course, in the sport of boxing, but being proficient in wrestling, playing football and all that type of stuff, right? And the thing about it is, with like wrestling and football, as I usually say in football, lowest man wins. And the thing about that is you got to be able to have a good base so that when you get in contact with your opponent, basically, like if you're lined up, like say we're in football, right? If you're lined up on the line of scrimmage, whether you're on offense or defense, once that ball is hiked, you got to make sure that you're lower than the person that's right across from you, because on initial contact, you want to be able to push up and use your base or your lower body in order to push up, so to speak, and be able to push them back. Same case goes with boxing here, especially if you're going to be working on the inside. And that's the thing that Terence Crawford is very proficient in, is being able to get low, being able to have that strong base so that he doesn't necessarily get pushed around by his opponents. You also saw that in his bout against Errol Spence, because a number of people felt like Errol Spence was the bigger fighter, of course, like coming down to 147 pounds, that he probably walked in at about, 168, 170 or whatever it is. But with Terence Crawford's background, he wasn't getting pushed around by Errol Spence. That wasn't going to happen. So here you're going to see if he has that same type of mentality against Israil Madrimov, who, of course, is, there has been at 154 pounds, for the majority of his professional career. He was there in the amateurs at around 165 pounds. That's pretty much where he competed at in the course of his amateur career, was around 165. So you might get a gauge of him trying to make 154 and then, rehydrating up to around 165, 166. Now, with the WBA, of course, they had some little thing about a rehydration clause that may be put into effect. It was initially brought up in the bout that happened with Gervonta Tank Davis and Frank Martin. As of right now, I can't necessarily confirm that they have a 10-pound weight, or 10-pound rehydration clause like the IBF has and has had there for years. But if not, then, hey, you got Madrimov, rehydrating up to around 165, 166 for this bout against Terence Crawford. And I will be really interested to see how Terence Crawford reacts to, first couple of punches that get landed flush on him, if that basically happens. But like I was mentioning before, with I say it's a fairly significant reach advantage there for Terence Crawford. So he could pretty much approach this like he's approached a number of his fights that he had at welterweight, where he had that significant reach advantage, where it's about him gauging the distance, making sure that he sees when his opponent, pretty much gives themselves up with an initial left jab, and then, counters off of that. But also with that reach advantage, his opponent could do a jab, but he could go over that with his right jab and still, connect. Whether they're faster than him or not, he can still connect with his right jab above what his opponent does. So you can see that here with Israil Madrimov, is that Madrimov, whether it's the movement or whatever it is, even with the jab, you can still have Crawford with that advantage, utilizing a reach advantage, being able to jab over or around whatever jab that Madrimov initially has. Now, the other key is, how is Madrimov going to get to the inside and be able to work on Terence Crawford? Because I feel like that is going to be the key there for Israil Madrimov, is getting to the inside and trying to work on the inside. Now, the other thing too, though, is with Terence Crawford, he loves to scrap. That's the thing. He loves to scrap. So whether you're trying to get to the inside or not, he's going to be game for all of that. You feel me? Shout out to my guy there from Urban Sports Scene in the building live. Yeah, controlling the distance is key for Crawford, but he has the speed advantage as well. Yeah, I feel like he would have the speed advantage here over Israil Madrimov. And the thing with Madrimov is, a lot of us, well, I would say, quote unquote, casual fans or whatever it is, may have not seen that much of Israil Madrimov. Okay. A couple of fights you might want to, try to look at if you can is, of course, his win where he won the WBA Super Welterweight Championship over Magomed Kurbanov in that Knockout Chaos fight card that was in Riyadh in March. And also, he was part of the fight card that included MJ Akhmadaliev versus Marlon Tapales back in April of last year. He had, a win over Rafael Abakwe there, and he was there at, actually, in that particular bout, he was in the middleweight division. So for his 10th professional fight, he was up there at 160, basically, facing Rafael Abakwe before, having most of those fights around that 154-pound range. So I think with that one, he, if I'm not mistaken, he, had like that one fight that year, last year, right? After, the two bouts against Michel Soro. So he had a significant time, out of the ring before getting in a bout there against Rafael Abakwe. But I think pretty much like his last four fights, you might be able to get something or find something in reference to Israil Madrimov to kind of like get a gauge of where he's at. But like I said, I mean, he's there with only 11 professional bouts going into this one. 11 professional bouts going into this one here against Terence Crawford. As I said before, currently ranked number 3 in the Boxing Source pound for pound rankings. Of course, 2-division undisputed world champion, 3-division world champion overall, going for his 4th division championship, basically here in this bout against Israil Madrimov. And, I feel like, he's, really been preparing for this. He said he's had like, about a 6-week or so camp out there, whether it's over by B&B, over in Omaha or in Colorado Springs usually. But they said, they've been doing workouts over in Las Vegas as, I've been chopping it up or chatting with his head trainer there, Brian Bomac McIntyre. So they've been over in Vegas for the majority, of the time there for his camp. And he's probably, been doing work in, some of the gyms that are out there, maybe had some things over at, Top Rank Gym or something like that. So, he's definitely been preparing for this particular opportunity against, against Israil Madrimov, right? So, like I said, I'm looking to see how Madrimov is able to get into the inside or to get within range there with Terence Crawford, because I think with Terence Crawford, his key is going to be making sure that he maintains that distance between him and Madrimov. And of course, some people are saying, hey, listen, he's there 36 years old. How will he be able to still perform here at 36 years old going into this bout against a guy, Israil Madrimov, that's there at 29? So, of course, youth will be, definitely be on this side here in this instance. But it's all about, overall experience from a pro level. You can have that amateur background, You could have it to the point where you face guys, that were like 24-2 or 27-5, or what is it like with Michelle Shoro at 35-2-1 in your first like 10 pro bouts. But with Terence Crawford, it's a whole different conversation. It's a whole different conversation. So, like I said, it's mainly about how Terence Crawford utilizes that reach advantage here early in this particular bout. Because sometimes Crawford may be a slow starter, but if he feels like he has definitive advantages against his opponent, he's going to utilize that from the jump. I think that reach advantage is going to be the one that kind of like shows like, okay, he will pretty much like stay within his range, keep that pace going, make his opponent pay, because he's going to be pretty much like a counterpuncher off this, like he was early in his bout against Errol Spence Jr., even though he already pretty much established that he had the reach advantage and that he could jab pretty much land with his jab over Errol Spence's jab at that particular point. That was, similar to like say, for example, the first fight that we had with Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder, where Tyson Fury had that reach advantage and used that with his jab in those first few rounds in that first bout. So you'll see this here once again with Terence Crawford. I feel like he's going to take advantage there with the reach and be able to have that jab established early and often here, and then work off of that, because you're going to see that Madrimov is going to try to either try to paw off the jab, try to, sway it off and try to get to the inside, and then, still try to, throw in the right hand. But I feel like he's going to be in a real issue there, especially if, as my guy mentioned, that if Crawford has a speed advantage, you can have Crawford like tagging him while he's trying to get closer there with the left hand. You know what I mean? So I feel like it's more about what Terence Crawford is able to do, particularly early in this bout, and establish that he has the reach advantage and kind of like be definitive with his jab. I feel like if he is definitive with his right jab, he's gonna, it might be something where he could coast to a good win in this one. Trying to check on, they got this whole thing with trying to check the odds here, but of course, you have the whole thing with the Olympics going down, so they got all this stuff with the Olympics all over the place right now. So I'm trying to get to something here. Right now, for at least with DraftKings, they have currently Terence Crawford at minus 750. They're currently minus 750, and Israil Madrimov at plus 500. Huge majority of the bets on DraftKings for that money line, 97% towards Terence Crawford on the money line. Only 3% are going with Israil Madrimov straight on the money line. The over-under set is at 10.5 rounds, where over is at minus 110 and under is at minus 125. They are definitely leaning towards Terence Crawford by KO. That's the only one there for the winning method at minus 135. Everything else is at plus, with Crawford by decision at plus 180. Israil Madrimov by KO at plus 850. And Madrimov by decision at plus 1100. So they don't even think that Madrimov will likely get a decision win over Terence Crawford. They say it's more so that Madrimov will get a win by TKO. That's crazy. Shout out to my guy L Dub in the building, man. Y'all check out L Dub on YouTube. Of course, you could get everything he's on his channel there. That's a boxing plug. He also has a website there for L Dub Boxing. So y'all can be able to check him out as well through YouTube and other avenues there, man. Just going through whole thing, telling the tape for the fight between Terence Crawford and Israil Madrimov. That is going to be for the WBA Super Welterweight Championship and also the WBO Interim Super Welterweight Championship. Of course, that whole situation there with the WBO. Terence Crawford kind of like talked about a little bit there with Andre Ward. He kind of was off a little bit because on one hand he's saying like, oh, they didn't necessarily want to have that fight, and then the other thing he was saying is like all business. We'll see. I don't know about all that, because if y'all followed the WBO and what they were doing, leading into the fight that happened between Tim Tszyu and Sebastian Fundora, and then what happened after that fight between Tim Tszyu and Sebastian Fundora, it looked like they had worked something out to where Terence Crawford has this fight here with Israil Madrimov for that WBO interim championship. Of course, with Sebastian Fundora not being necessarily cleared to fight or even cleared to be in any type of activity until what? September, October? So if you knew that he couldn't have anything in any physical form until September and you wanted to have a fight in July, well, there you go. Shout out 93 Octane, man. It says, according to Dmitry Bivol, who trains with Israil Madrimov, Bud is in for a real scrap. Hey, we gotta see, man. I mean, like I was saying before with Israil Madrimov, very, very, very experienced in the amateurs. Very experienced in the amateurs. Once he stepped into the pros, his first pro bout was against Vladimir Hernandez, and some boxing fans know about Vladimir Hernandez, over the past few years, as far as like who he's been able to fight here, recently, whether it's Alfredo Angulo. We got to win over Alfredo Angulo. Got to win over J. Rock Williams. He lost to Jesus Ramos Jr. Got a win over Chuck Simpson. Was able to outwork Chuck Simpson on that overtime boxing event there last year. Was pretty much like outboxed by Troy Isley a few months after that, and then recently was on the pro box card in Plant City there in June of this year against Guido Schramm. So and I think he had was that one of those serious knockouts that he had against Guido Schramm? I gotta go back to that particular one, because I think that one was, I think he had a great knockout win there in that one. Hernandez is definitely a good competitor there out there within the super welterweight, middleweight division right now. So that's pretty notable that Madrimov got a victory over Vladimir Hernandez in his very first pro fight. And he's faced, a number of guys that have good pro experience over the course of his pro career to this point. So, he's definitely decorated there, not just in the amateurs, but, has had some pretty good fights here in the pros at 154 pounds. But, now, we got to see how he performs here against Bud Crawford. Like I said before, it's more about with Crawford's reach advantage, definitive reach advantage that he has over Israil Madrimov, how Madrimov is going to be able to deal with that in order to, be effective on his own. So I have to see how he reacts to that. You know what I mean? Like I did mention the whole thing with the odds. They definitely leaning towards Terence Crawford. Minus 750 on the money line, with 97% of the people there that have been betting on DraftKings, they have picked Terence Crawford on that money line. So that's definitely one thing there. What is this other thing? I was gonna look on FanDuel too, see what FanDuel talking about. See how they kind of like have it. They might have it with the same odds. Let's see. They have it at minus 700 in favor of Terence Crawford, and for Israil Madrimov at plus 480. Yeah, so kind of like have it around the same, pretty much around the same there. As far as like, them leaning towards Terence Crawford by stoppage over Israil Madrimov. And you know what? I'm kind of like leaning towards that as well. My thing is that if you have Terence Crawford at the top of his game, where he, basically, as I said before, he moves off of being able to gauge the distance against his opponent and kind of like working off that, whether he's, pretty much square and initially throwing his right jab and starting off by doing that, or seeing if his opponent is going to be aggressive towards him and then working off that being as a counterpuncher. So I think he has those particular advantages from an offensive standpoint. From a defensive standpoint, I'd say it pretty much like goes off of what Madrimov does early. Is he going to be able to get within range to be able to be the most effective there against Terence Crawford? You know what I'm saying? A number of fighters that he's been able to fight, they may have had some type of reach advantage against Madrimov. But is this something to the point where they have combination punching, very effective with their counter punching, that and other intangibles that Terence Crawford has that makes him be, of course, currently 3-division world champion, 2-division undisputed champion. I'm not so sure. But yeah, he's faced a number of guys that have had, either been taller than him or have had, the longer reach, and he's been able to, adapt from that. But they're not Terence Crawford. They're not Terence Crawford. Definitely not Terence Crawford. So I'd like to see if he might try to have the approach of, I may have to either try to, catch a number of punches, either try to block and then counter, or take a couple shots in order to be able to land on Terence Crawford. So I don't know. Yeah, and I was like it was mentioned there. Yeah, but as a sniper, controlling distance and closing distance with accuracy and power. Yep, that's the thing. Accuracy and power. Timing, accuracy, power. That is, one of the biggest elements that Crawford has against a number of opponents that he's faced over the course of his professional career, is being able to do that. A number of people kind of like say that Shakur Stevenson is great at controlling distance against his opponents. You can say the same thing here with Terence Crawford. He definitely has that ability to control the distance there against his opponents. And I see him doing that here against Israil Madrimov. Now, one of the things that was like kind of mentioned earlier in the week leading into this bout was that Israil Madrimov's trainer there, was it Joel Diaz, kind of like was pointing out that Madrimov is going to be in there as like, quote unquote, the bigger fighter or whatever it is, that, he's going to have, a lot of strength and a lot of power going into this bout against Terence Crawford. Well, Coach Bomack said the muscle means nothing. Like that, I'm looking, at this text right here. Like he had texted me, what is it, on Tuesday? He said the muscle means nothing. That's his quote. You know what I'm saying? And I mentioned it earlier. I don't see that it means much either. We're talking about Terence Crawford. As I said, this guy has a background in wrestling. Played football or whatever it is, but definitely with wrestling. And we still, that's the whole thing with wrestling too. So, that muscle that Madrimov may have, whether he's gonna, like I said, make it at 154, be at like around 153 and a half, maybe at the weigh-in or something, and then rehydrate to like 163 or something like that. I don't think that's going to matter that much to Terence Crawford. I don't think it will matter that much to Terence Crawford. It's going to be more about the technique of Israil Madrimov, is if he's going to be able to adjust to that reach advantage that Terence Crawford has. And the thing about, being accurate, like I said, Terence Crawford is very accurate, and when he's able to, land his shots, you know what I'm saying? So that's it. Yep, definitely right. Wrestlers understand weight distribution, laws of physics. Weight laws of physics with that. And I mentioned the whole thing with football too. I said lowest man wins. That's basically the name of the game. Lowest man wins. So, whether Terence Crawford is there, they're pretty much around the same height though. Crawford and Madrimov are around the same height. But I mean, Terence Crawford knows technique, getting low, whether they're in the inside or whatnot. So if you think that Israil Madrimov, rehydrating himself and being at 165, 166 and try to lean on Terence Crawford to think that that's going to wear him down, nah, I don't see that. I don't see that. So it's going to be more about, like I said, number one with Madrimov is he going to be able to, try to take a few punches in order to be able to get off with this offense on his own, or if he is going to try to be a counterpuncher himself, which that's not going to be, necessarily a good look early. That could like bank in rounds for Terence Crawford early, and you don't want to start off with a deficit there against Terence Crawford like that. You don't necessarily want to do that. For me, I felt like at least recently, the fighter that did the best against Terence Crawford was first Shawn Porter. But Shawn Porter's style is kind of to the level of where you kind of get to the inside. He has a method of getting to the inside, whether he has to take a few punches or he has the mobility to get close against his opponents. So I felt like Shawn Porter had that particular ability to do that. Him being a little bit shorter than Terence Crawford, but him himself also having a football background, so he knows about the whole thing, weight distribution, getting low and getting around a number of those jabs that Terence Crawford has. So early on, you've seen Shawn Porter be able to get a little bit of success there against Terence Crawford, until Terence Crawford kind of like switched things up on him as far as like the stance goes, and utilize that reach advantage and was able to land the jab, with more success over the course of those rounds before he eventually ended up, stopping Shawn Porter at that particular point, right? The other fighter I felt like in the welterweight division that had something there with Terence Crawford was Kell Brook. But, Kell Brook was there a little bit taller than Terence Crawford, but also was very consistent with his jab early. He was consistent with the jab early, so he was able to have some success with that, jabbing with Terence Crawford, but also like he wanted to be last in an exchange. So if he was first, he also wanted to be last in the exchange. So he could be first with the left jab. You could have Crawford, respond, but then Brook kind of like responded back with another jab or another punch. So early on, you seen him try to be first and last against Terence Crawford, which I thought was pretty good there early until Crawford kind of like switched things up once again, and Brook just couldn't handle that switch. You know what I'm saying? So there's that, man. So how is Israil Madrimov going to be able to, whether that initial first couple of rounds with Terence Crawford, where Terence Crawford will probably analyze what Madrimov is going to do early and then just work off of that. You feel me? Thanks there, brother Robert Mountain there. Being able to be a new subscriber to the channel. Y'all, like I said, y'all, if y'all like the content, hit the like button. You can also subscribe. We have interviews. We do the podcast, weekly here on Sunday nights. Here, usually at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, but I wanted to delay it here a little bit. Try to go through a little bit more here with this particular breakdown of Terence Crawford and Israil Madrimov. Might go a little bit more into a couple more fights that are in the card, and then later on we'll have an analysis of some of the action that happened yesterday. But be sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, notification bell that's on there, and hit the share button. Hit the share button, let other people know about the Boxing Source. We do have content here for different events. Trying to plan on going to a local fight card over in the Washington D.C. area on August 3rd. So I'm gonna try to see if I could have have the pay-per-view there for that Crawford-Madrimov, while I see if I'll be able to cover the Davis Boxing Promotions card that's at the Entertainment and Sports Arena there coming up on August 3rd. So just be able to check that out. Y'all are in the DC area, y'all be sure to support that particular fight card. You're gonna have Jordan White there against Jason Sanchez in the main event. You're also gonna have Francois Scarborough there versus Ferris Dixon Jr. Well, Scarborough Jr. versus Dixon Jr. also there on the card. But Jordan White, he's been doing some work there within the 130-pound division. He's had a couple of fights over there at the Entertainment and Sports Arena there, the past couple of times, man. Hey, what's up with my guy? Smack Like That, man. What's good with you, man? Of course, you were out there for, the fight card that was over in Hanover, Maryland, of course, with the Jeter Promotions card. Like I mentioned before, you might see you over there in this Davis Boxing Promotions card that's coming up August 3rd, Entertainment and Sports Arena. There, like I said, Jordan White, he's climbing up the ranks there at 130 pounds. He did mention in his last bout that he wouldn't mind having a shot at Lamont Roach Jr., the WBA champion there at 130 pounds. So we got to see what happens here with Jordan White coming up on Saturday. And of course, like I said, you're going to have that fight card, of course, over at BMO Stadium, Los Angeles, there with Terence Crawford versus Israil Madrimov there. So it's gonna be a good overall card. Like I said, I'm seriously leaning towards Terence Crawford getting this win, eventually getting a stoppage victory over Israil Madrimov in order to win the WBA Super Welterweight Championship and be the WBO interim champion at 154 pounds. Yeah, man, it's so many fights this weekend, man. It's gonna be packed. It's gonna be packed. Very busy weekend there for August 3rd. There, we gotta see how that goes. How that's going to turn out. Like I said, Crawford versus Madrimov there. You do have in a co-feature bout Isaac Cruz versus Jose Rayo Valenzuela for the WBA Super Lightweight Championship. You're going to also have Andy Ruiz Jr. versus Jarrell Miller in the heavyweight division. You're going to have Jared Anderson versus Martin Bacoli in the heavyweight division. Andy Cruz in his fourth professional bout going up against Antonio Moran. Number of fight fans might be familiar with Antonio Moran. He's fought, Barbosa. He got knocked out by Devin Haney over at the MGM National Harbor in 2019. I saw that. I was there live for that one. Fought, Romero Duno, beat Romero Duno in a Pro Box card in January. But now he's going up against Andy Cruz. Of course, Andy Cruz, the gold medalist, Olympic gold medalist there. So he's going to be in action. We got David Morrell Jr. against Radovic Kalajic. You're also going to have, Steven Nelson getting back in here against Marcos Rodriguez. I think this is okay. Yeah, this is going to be Steven Nelson's first fight of this year. He did fight last year in that card of Spence versus Crawford. So he'll be back in action there in the super middleweight division. You got to see him, see how he performs, because he was going up in the ranks there in the super middleweight division. Was paired against a number of fighters that were also climbing up to the ranks at super middleweight before, we had like a little bit of a break or something like that. Yeah, Pitbull Cruz, man. We got to see how Pitbull Cruz fares here against Raul Valenzuela. That's a co-feature bout there at BMO Stadium. And of course, Pitbull Cruz is, coming off of that win against Rolly Romero, man. Like Rolly being Rolly, though. He had, some success early, but you're going up against Pitbull. If you can't hurt Pitbull, if you just going, you just landing punches upstairs against Pitbull, that ain't gonna matter much, man. He's gonna walk through that and then try to get to you, and that's what ended up happening there for Rolly Romero. So Isaac Cruz, being the WBA super lightweight champion, having this bout against Raul Valenzuela. I mean, you got two guys that pretty much were at 135 pounds. Yeah, they're at 135 pounds. Now they're going up 140. You had Isaac Cruz with his first bout at 140 against Rolly Romero, but Rolly Romero had already been at 135 before himself. So now you're basically going to have two lightweight fighters fighting for a world championship here at super lightweight. That'll be interesting. Of course, with Raul Valenzuela, he had that, early knockout loss against Edwin De Los Santos. That's probably De Los Santos' biggest highlight of his entire career. Okay. After that, listen, I said it before, I said it again. I don't want to see Edwin De Los Santos on my screen ever again. I'm absolutely serious on this. I don't want to see, after what we saw last year, I don't want to see Edwin De Los Santos on my screen ever again. Okay, so we got that out of the way. Now, all right, with Jose Valenzuela, after that, he had the first bout against Chris Colbert in March of last year. We ended up losing by a unanimous decision there, but a number of people may have felt like Chris Colbert won. Chris Colbert lost that fight, and then Raul won. So they said, you know what? Let's run it back. They ran it back. They had a bet on the line for that particular fight. That was December of last year, and Raul just pieced them up. He pieced them up, knocked them out in front of his own corner. Had my guys over there from Headbangers Gym, man. My guy Patrice Bowie Harris, he was just shaking his head, man. It was like, oh my God. He was like, oh. So Raul got that win, you know what I'm saying? But now he's fighting for a world title at 140 pounds. Yo, what up, my guy Jay in the building, man? Ghost JC Patrick, aka Edwin De Los Santos. Listen, for those that don't know, right? Okay, last year he had Edwin De Los Santos, right? If I'm not mistaken, he was part of that co-feature bout of Boots Ennis there. When Boots Ennis was where he was fighting in Atlantic City, right, against Roman Villa. Edwin De Los Santos was in there against Joseph Adorno, and a lot of people feel like, okay, he's coming off of that win that he had against Raul, had that knockout. Now he's going up against Joseph Adorno, and a number of people like highly favored him over Joseph Adorno. So I'm like saying, hey, okay, he's just gonna blow right by Joseph Adorno and get a stoppage victory and all that type of stuff. Man, that 10-round bout looked like it went forever, man. I was like, oh my God. Yeah. I was there. I was covering the fight. I was there, photography and all that. It just felt like it was going on forever, man. I was like, okay, he gets that unanimous decision win. That's number one. And then we had a fight with Shakur Stevenson. And let me tell y'all something. Okay, I'm gonna just put it right here. I'm gonna just tell y'all something. Okay, I thought about applying for that fight card, but I held back on it. I said no. I said I wasn't gonna do it. I wasn't gonna do it. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm a media member or whatever it is, whatnot. I'm gonna just tell y'all, man. I'm thankful. I'm thankful that yo, listen, we had to stay up until 12:30 a.m. Eastern time, basically for the start of that fight, and that thing didn't end until about 1:30 a.m. and it's Thursday. Come on, man, what are we doing? Nah, man, listen, I don't want to see. I swear to you, I don't want to see Edwin De Los Santos on my screen ever again. Okay. All right, real quick, before we get one of our panelists here on here, man, Smack, like they said, yeah, didn't expect Cobra to get knocked out like that. Yeah, man. Yeah, he got clipped. My guy, Light Skin Lou in the building. Salute to you, man. Y'all be sure to check out Light Skin Lou on YouTube. He has some great interviews on his channel. I think he has, what was it? From Wednesday, he has interviews with like 3 fighters that are included in the August 3rd card over at the Entertainment and Sports Arena in Washington, D.C. Yeah, so you do have that, man. Yeah, you said Phil Ryle won the first fight. Yeah, Cobra, man, respect for pushing through and making it to decision. I mean, he made it because he got knocked down early in that first fight, and then he was able to manage that and look like he outboxed him for a good amount of those rounds, but maybe not enough for some to get that win. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, man, I'm telling you, man. Edwin De Los Santos, bro. I swear to y'all, I swear, man. Don't want to see him. All right, I got my guy that's here on the queue. Of course, he'll talk a little bit about this particular fight. Was hoping that he'll be able to make it for that Jake Paul joint, the other weekend, but couldn't necessarily make it. But he's my guy. He's a chef. He's a weightlifter. He's a security guy. He's a promoter. He's a manager. It's my guy, Terrell, man. What's going on?
What's up, JR? What's going on? Everything good with you? All right?
Yeah, man. Everything's good, man. Everything's good, man.
Honestly, I was kind of I've been doing so much different stuff lately. I'm not even plugged in like I usually am and everything.
Yeah.
I do keep up with stuff. And first of all, thank you for the midweek report. That's been doing it for about a couple of years now. Just I keep my boxing news and tips and stuff like that. And my insight, that's my insight info right there. So thanks for keeping that going on right there. Real quick on the Jake Paul show, and 2 weeks ago, right? What was the attendance for that? Do you know? Any idea?
Now I had to look it up. Usually since I wasn't able to necessarily cover it, I have to see if I could get that one. What it was, but I mean, he usually gets some good attendance out there. Because it doesn't really cost that much for the for tickets of that. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, but not just that. But I remember what he's been doing for about 3-4 years, something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember when he first jumped on the scene in his first event. I mean, a lot of us were very critical of what he's doing. He's trying to just jump to a venue or a sport that he doesn't necessarily belong or fit in. But when you fast forward now, right, and Tampa, right?
Yep.
So Amalie Arena, that's the main place where most big events are at. The Tampa Bay Storm plays there, and big concerts, comedy shows, all that. That's where it goes on at. And you look at someone that's not a full-time, I won't say full-time boxer. He's full-time now, but he's not necessarily a traditional boxer. But yeah, he's able to go to Tampa, Florida, a major city, and possibly fill up Amalie Arena.
Mm-hmm.
That's impressive. That is impressive, right?
They said about 17,500.
Yeah, and I know he got other two boxes on the card, which kudos to him. But so now he's still doing it, and on top of it, he's bringing revenues. Once you guys bring eyes to the sport, revenues, things like that, and bring other boxes along, like with Amanda Serrano, things like that. So
Yeah.
but still, it's still amazing. But then again, this is a new day and age in terms of social media and getting fame from that, things like that. So, but it's like just at this point, I gotta give him his little flowers. Have to.
Yeah, man, he's definitely been putting in work here, over the past few years. He's, started it out in 2020 there, and of course he had, the whole little moment with Nate Robinson. I think that's what kind of like boosted him to, really continue, what he was doing here in this whole boxing thing. But now he, still has what was scheduled there against Mike Tyson in November 15th. But like I said initially, it remains to be seen how that's going to turn out. I think we say Tyson is saying he's preparing for it right now, but I like to see if Tyson is going to actually be in the condition to be out there to have that particular bout. Now of course we have what's coming up August 3rd. Los Angeles there, Terence Crawford going for a world title in the fourth weight division there. What are your initial thoughts about it?
Well, for one, that's just a great card from top to bottom. One of the best cards we've seen in quite some long time and everything. And hope to see more cards on top of that. And probably the best thing about that card is going to be on what's it's in Vegas. No, it's not. It's California,
Los
right?
Angeles.
Yeah. So, so at least we don't have to be worried about stepping in the middle of the night to see a fight. And even though it's going to be a long card, but you know how to get from that. But that card is a phenomenal card. I mean, so many competitive fights. Honestly, one of the low key fights I want to see is Andy Ruiz against what's my man's name? Israil
Miller.
Yeah, and just what I said, because I want to see what Ruiz has left in the tank at this point. Not so much as he's a tremendous fighter, but we haven't seen him in quite some time. Largely to do is probably just maybe press himself out, something like that, whatever, right? But just I want to see what he has. I mean, like it or love it, he is a former heavyweight champion of the world. Like it or love it. So, but
Right.
but the card itself, we'll see what Pitbull's he's still doing. He's going to mold on his opponents, things like that. And of course, even at the top of the card with Crawford, once again. And this is why we love boxing so much. In most 50-50 fights, anybody can win. And this fight, I think that we can say this is definitely a 50-50 fight for Crawford, right? Going to a new division. And you don't think so?
Well, I mean, the thing with Madrimov is that he, with his level of pro experience, I don't think he has the level of pro experience that'll have him keeping up with the intangibles that Terence Crawford has. And like I said, going into this, I think with Crawford having the reach advantage here and being able to use those intangibles in the level of experience that he'll be able to, pick off Madrimov early in this particular bout, and then work off of that to have Madrimov try to adjust and try to catch up, so to speak, and that will leave more openings for Terence Crawford to be able to open up more as far as like combinations are concerned.
Yeah, I definitely get that. So in that case, for me, that makes it close to a 50-50 fight is Crawford's going up in weight, but it's just still has the skills. We know that, like you just elaborated. But is he going to be strong? Can't take a punch from a true 54-pounder, things like that. So those are the new questions that we need to have answers from Crawford.
Right. Yeah.
Like that. So maybe not 50 per se, but it's a new challenge. It's a new challenge, especially with Crawford still trying to campaign to get a Canelo fight. Because like if Crawford goes here and blows these guys out of the water in a devastating knockout, we very well might see a Crawford Canelo fight down the line paid for by Turkey, like
by
that.
Turkey. And that's interesting there. That Turkey LLC is interested in like pulling off an event like that, because that would be an event, so to speak. and not necessarily saying like, hey, if the people are demanding, like people are some folks that like talk about Turkey LLC and saying that he's bringing boxing back and he's bringing quote unquote fights that people want to see, right? But the fight fans want to see Canelo Alvarez versus David Benavidez. So if that's the case, if you're Turkey LLC and you're familiar with that, and I know that he knows that fans are pretty much demanding that fight. Why are you talking about potentially having Canelo Alvarez facing Terence Crawford instead of David Benavidez? That's the thing that I kind of like say in reference to that. Of course, we know about Canelo Alvarez and the announcement that was made a few days ago that he's facing Edgar Berlanga for the unified super middleweight titles, not the undisputed anymore, because he got stripped of the IBF. Rightfully so. But it's the IBF be IBFing, and well, Canelo's like, oh well, I get paid. I just don't have to pay for another belt. That's basically it. But that's a whole other story here. Visit later. Back on that fight card, of course, is coming up. But you did mention the whole thing with Isaac Cruz and Rayo Valenzuela. That's going to be pretty good. You said that you're very interested in the Andy Ruiz versus Jarrell Miller fight, and Ruiz, I would really be interested to see what Andy Ruiz looks like here going into this particular fight. Of course, a number of people felt like he should have had a fight with Deontay Wilder, but looked like he asked for a little bit too much money for that bout that happened against Deontay Wilder, and that's why you ended up having, Wilder facing Joseph Parker in December of last year instead of Andy Ruiz Jr. So he did have that. And then, of course, with Jarrell Miller having his first loss of his career against Daniel Dubois, pretty much, just getting beat up in that one. So it's going to be good because these are two fighters at the heavyweight division that don't, have much of an issue, throwing punches. Although with Jarrell Miller, some people say that, he might have had a little bit of help earlier in his career for being very active with his hands. So I want to see how he does here against Andy Ruiz Jr., particularly if Andy Ruiz is like the same fighter that he was, before he, had this extended layoff, so to speak. So this is Andy Ruiz Jr., who scored, knockdowns against, of course, had stopped Anthony Joshua, knocked down Luis Ortiz a couple of times in his last fight that he had a couple years ago. And then they had that bout with, Chris Arreola too. So, it's going to be a real interesting one. And I feel like with Jarrell Miller, he knows that this is basically it as far as like him being any type of contender there in the heavyweight division. He has to be able to get past Andy Ruiz Jr. in order to get back in the fold there at heavyweight. You feel me?
Yeah, just even with that the Ruiz Miller fight, I think in that Miller's last fight, remember the press conference, he's trying to bully Dubois, everything. That necessarily didn't work. He just put him throughout the entire promotion, and once you got in the ring, you got to back it up, man. You got to back it up, and that just wasn't the case. So I expect for this, I really expect for Ruiz. If Ruiz is not hurt, or Andrew going to this fight, I expect his hand speed to be on full display, right? And we know he definitely has enough power in there to hurt someone, right? So that's but at the same time, that's why I definitely want to see it. It's boxing. It's interesting. But I think Ruiz should definitely emerge victorious from that fight in that regard. So even down to the David Morrell Kalajdzic fight.
Oh, it looked like he had just dang, man. Looked like Terrell pretty much got cut off there, man. I don't know what's up. Hopefully he'll be able to get back on here, to talk about, that thing there with David Morrell Jr. and Radovich Kalajdzic. But he had talked about that whole thing with Andy Ruiz and Jarrell Miller there. So we'll get back into it. He should be back here. There he goes.
Yeah, but like I said on the David Morrell Collages fight. So thank you for
Yeah,
months ago when you got me out to Plant City. We got to see Collages fight. Who's that guy? Sullivan Barrera. I think beat him, right?
Sullivan Barrera, that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah. So and just be able to see that fight and see Collages go on to this opportunity to fight David Morrell, and this is going to be at what 170? What is it?
175. Yeah,
Yeah,
yep.
yeah,
He's
yeah,
at light heavyweight now.
yeah. And Collages, he's a solid fighter. He definitely what he did what he had to do against an age Sullivan Barrera, who did have some fight and tried to survive, but just didn't have enough to mount any particular offense in to win that fight. But Collages is solid. But so even Morrell, this fight's gonna be at 175, like you said. So that's interesting right there. And of course, we're typically speaking to we fight at a higher weight, like we saw with Claressa Shields, you should be stronger, have more popping and punches, things like that. So that's definitely a good fight to watch too. On top of that,
Yeah. Now, what's interesting about this particular fight is I don't know why they did this though, but maybe it's the WBA, whatever it is, right? They will have their regular light heavyweight title on the line in that particular bout. So, whoever wins this will be, pretty much like supposedly in line to, face the full champion or the super champion there, whatnot, in Dimitri Bivol. But Dimitri Bivol only has like that one title. So it's like, how can you be a super champ? Like, in order to be like a super champion, at least to me in the WBA, is if you're holding other world championships. But if that's like the only title that you have, like you shouldn't be a super champion. Like I just don't understand that. But hey, listen, if that's the way that WBA could get more money, I don't know, man. I have to talk to the president, man. Gilberto Mendoza, man. I might have to have a chat with Gilberto Mendoza because, like, what's the point of having this be for any type of world title? Just have the winner be at number one in the WBA if you're gonna do that. But hey,
well, I don't know about you, but I think tomorrow I'm gonna feel like a super champ myself. I want to announce myself when I go to work as a super champ of the day.
yeah, man, yeah, because it's like they just come up with naming these people or naming these fights for these world titles, and I'm like, ugh. It's like, and to a certain extent, like Errol Spence Jr. kind of like talked about it before his fight against Terence Crawford about like how these boxing organizations like do this type of stuff where they could just add their name onto a fight or get money off of certain fights and what do they do with the money and all that type of stuff. That that's a whole nother conversation. But to just add themselves into about just to just attach their name to it. I mean that's like a whole different aspect there with that. So but yeah, I'm also interested to see how David Morrell performs here against Kalajic. There being that is his first fight at 175. Hopefully, I don't know. I'm not sure if his coach or trainer Ronnie Shields will be available on Tuesday. Usually has conversation on the War Week channel on YouTube on Tuesdays there, but we'll see if he's gonna be there either be able to have that show on Tuesday or he's already going to be in Los Angeles preparing with David Morrell Jr. for that. But I'm also interested in the bout that's also going to be in the heavyweight division with Jared Anderson versus Martin Bakole there at heavyweight. Jared Anderson, of course, he's been floating around as a contender out there in the heavyweight division. Currently number 4 in the WBO, number 5 in the WBC, and in the IBF. Martin Bakole is ranked number 1 in the WBA. He's not, necessarily the quote unquote mandatory or whatever it is, but he's held that top spot in the WBA and is also number 6 in the WBC. So these guys here, man, it's going to be a really interesting bout to me because you got Jared Anderson, of course. He's there. I'm only 23 or whatever it is, 23, 24. As he famously said there to Roy Jones Jr. Going up against Martin Bacoli there, who's had a number of fights. Of course, in the UK, basically based in the UK or whatnot. He's Congolese. Had his last bout against Carlos Takam in October, got a stoppage win in that. So I'd really like to see how Jared Anderson performs here against Martin Bacoli here. We've seen, of course, Jared Anderson against the former world champion in Charles Martin last year, and had a couple of fights after that. I thought that fight against Riyad Murray, I thought he was going to just be able to steamroll Riyad Murray, but Murray, I guess, didn't necessarily cooperate or whatever it is, like some people say, and it went a full 10 rounds. Now I want to see how Jared Anderson performs against a fairly active fighter in Martin Bacoli and how he's going to be able to fare to see if he gets this win, because if he does, then there can't be anything else out there for him than seriously being part of the picture of let's say, for example, if he wins this particular fight and this is part of a Riyadh season card, he should fight another fighter that's been involved in Riyadh season that won his last bout, and that's Zhilei Zhang. So I would want to see Jared Anderson versus Zhilei Zhang next if Jared Anderson gets this win over Martin Bacoli, man. What you got about that fight?
Well, look at this. So when you look at Jared Anderson, like you just said, he's what, 22, 24, right?
24.
Yeah. All right. So really there's no particular rush to go right to the top, right? So right now he's at what, number 6 in the WBC. Like you pointed out, he's number 13 in the WBA, 5 in the IBF, and also number 4 in the WBO, right? So when we look at the heavyweight picture, what's the opening prize? To get the best fights, to get the best money, and of course to get a title shot and have that belt around your waist, right? We get that.
Mm-hmm.
So where those belts are right now, Usyk, right? And that's gonna be with a rematch coming up for him and Fury whenever that does get announced. So in the meantime, it's best for you just to, I don't want to say tread water. You don't want to just stay in the same place. Everything we don't want. You never want that to be stagnant, right? Mm-hmm. What's the guy that fought last week on the I think the zone card? He fought a puncture. Trying to think the guys. He lost. He lost his fight though. It's either a week before last. He lost. He's undefeated, but the guy he fought was like a grown man, pretty much. You guys talked about.
No, not Moses Atama. You talking about undefeated though. And I'll probably like think about it. But you said last week, a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, no more than 2 weeks ago. He fought and lost. Then got stopped. Got knocked out, TKO or something like that.
Oh shoot, man! I got to figure out if it's one of those guys that was like climbing up the ranks or something like that.
Yeah. So basically, the point I'm trying to make is like, of course, we want you don't want to be stagnant, right? But mm-hmm. So for Jared Anderson, Charles Martin, he won the fight, but kind of got humbled in a sense. We know that, and then even the fight that you missed the fight after that. It went with the distance, and we thought she got stopped. That didn't happen. And then it's the kind of short guy that kind of ran around the ring or something like that for the entire fight and everything. And Jared necessarily cut the ring off like he should have to kind of get to the guy.
Yeah.
So now fighting Martin Bacoli, who's ranked number 1 in the WBA, you don't want Jared to bite off too much too soon per se, like with Charles Martin. It's like you won the fight, but yet you got roughed up some. But that's boxing, though. That's boxing. At the same time, mm-hmm. So being 24 years old, at this point now, you want to just keep making your steady climb and then position yourself for the – because, honestly, these belts are going to be locked up for the next year or so. We know that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, with the exception of the IBF.
Yeah. So even with that, because what got isn't Joshua and Dubois signed, right? They're signed, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I mean, so it's other than that, it's just basically just to make a steady climb. And I admire this. This is a good. He's targeting someone in the top 10. In this case, he's the number one ranked WBA contender. So go after the guy. Because hell, it was 2-3 years ago when Jared said he wanted to go to what's the guy's name that Dubois beat last time.
He beat Jarrell Miller and he beat
Hergovich. Because
Yeah.
Jared Anderson called him out not too long ago, right? And now,
Yeah, he did.
yeah, and kind of when you look at it now, he probably wouldn't try to find a way into that fight, because even if he would have got that fight and got a win, he'd be in an even better position than he is right now. But once again, there's no rush. Just don't fight. Don't find no tomato cans. So that's it. Find one in the top 10. Find a great match for yourself and go after that. That's what we're getting right here.
Yeah. And the thing about it with Jared Anderson, as long as he is able to keep like the momentum that he has as far as like staying unbeaten, and getting his win over Martin McCauley, then yeah, he will be able to move towards being a serious contender there in the heavyweight division. And after this, like I said, I don't want to see him. Like this here actually is the fight that I would want to see Jared Anderson in, to like say, hey, is he ready to be a serious contender in the heavyweight division, or does he have still some more time to try to develop and everything like that? Now, I talked with his trainer, some years back, and going up to last year, whatever it is. And he said, like, they wanted to bring him up, fairly slowly, get him up in the ranks and try to develop him. I mean, he has like 17 pro fights there at heavyweight. Now, you don't necessarily see fighters like that climb up that fast, particularly in the heavyweight division, right? So, like, after he had, what is it? Let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pro fights. Then he fought like guys that were like 22-0, 17-1, 24-2, you know what I'm saying, like 26-5 or whatever it is, before he ended up fighting Charles Martin, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're pretty much bringing up your fighter going up against this type of competition, then it's like, now you don't have time to like really develop him and putting him up against, guys where it could build his record. Like how they have Richard Torres over there at Top Rank. Like he's there at like 10-0, 11-0, but they're putting him up against guys where he could just build up their record so he could get to like 20-0, 21-0, 22-0. They really didn't do that here with Jared Anderson. So now it's like, okay, after you have this fight here against Charles Martin, and then going up against these guys that have a little bit more experience there, like Andre Radeko, Riyad Murray, I'm not necessarily counting because, like I said, Murray's basically moved up in weight to have that particular bout. But now against Martin McCauley, it's like, okay, this is make or break. This is where we see if you're a serious contender here at the heavyweight division, or is it basically too soon for you at this point? Because we've had like something like that before with what was it? Efe Ajagba, when he fought Frank Sanchez a couple of years ago. They both of them at that time were undefeated. Efe Ajagba was coming up in the ranks. Frank Sanchez, was there, didn't have that much pro fights, but we knew about him, Cuban background, all that type of stuff. And Efe Ajagba was pretty much like outclassed in that fight. So now we got to see here if Jared Anderson is able to step up and have this and have a good performance here against Martin McCauley, or is it going to be too soon? And the thing is with McCauley, he's there. Hopefully, he's there at 6'6". He's kind of weighed around as low as around 252 pounds. But in his last fight, he was as high as 300 pounds.
Wow, that's a big difference.
Yeah, Yeah. So he had like a significant gain in weight from being at 251 pounds in 2020 to being at 282 in 2021. And he hasn't necessarily been lower than 275 since. So I really like to see like what condition that Martin Bakole is going to be in here in this particular bout against Jared Anderson, who kind of like is there around that 250 range, 247, 250 range usually. It's like I said, it's going to be an interesting bout, but hey, maybe it's going to kind of like hinge on the condition there for Martin Bakole going into that fight. So that's another real key fight that I'm kind of like looking at here for that fight card on August 3rd in BMO Stadium. So I would say, in order of as far as like intriguing matchups to me, I'd say Isaac Cruz versus Rayo Valenzuela, number one. Jared Anderson versus Martin Bakole, number two, and then Crawford versus Madrimov, number three. So we do have that. Now, the thing that got me is this whole card, with it being a Riyadh season card, it's going to start at 1 p.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. Eastern time. And if you go off of what, the previous Riyadh season events and those fight cards went, it's going to be another one of those 5-6 hour events, man. And I'm like, for that to be, out here in America, I don't know if people will, really gravitate towards that all too well. That's going to be, yeah, I don't know, man.
But at least there's some good fights on that card. But even just jump back to Jared Anderson, what you were saying, I hope you did not. Well, Bakole, right there, 6'7", whatever. This dude comes in at 300 pounds. No, I think we know what's going to happen. If he comes in at 280, 290, something like that, you're too heavy. For someone that's going to be mobile and very active like Jared Anderson, he's just going to just overwhelm this guy and basically go for the knockout with just punches coming everywhere like that, right? So, I mean, that's just so. If Jared can go in there and secure that knockout, depending on this guy's conditioning, it was going to be the main factor for him to fight. I could see him against a Zalay Zhang. I could see that, right? And the reason why I say that, the things that I would say me, the things that I wanted Wilder to do to Zhang, he couldn't do. The things that I wanted the Wilder to do, Jared Anderson could do to Zhang. With his being active, punch volume, just being active in the fight, not throwing 1-2 punches at a time. So Jared Anderson could definitely do that to Zhang on what Wilder should have done to him in that regard.
Yeah. And he, he has the ability to be, active with his hands, pretty much similar to Joseph Parker, what Joseph Parker was doing against Zalay Zhang. He had a lot of success against Zalay Zhang and was able to pull off the decision victory. It was just that he got caught a couple of times there with the power of Zalay Zhang, man. And, as long as Zalay Zhang still has that power, being able to, land with that left hand, he could, really be dangerous towards anybody, but as long as you have that activity with your hands there, be able to keep busy and stay busy with your hands, that Zalay Zhang is more worried about defense and offense, then, you really have a good shot to, really get the win over Zalay Zhang in that particular aspect. So, but we got to see what happens here with Jared Anderson first against Martin Bakole.
And not just that, as long as someone doesn't go into the ring and do the Wilder spinning punch.
Yeah, that was just something, man. He got spun around and didn't know where he was, and oh goodness, but then, that's pretty much the preview there of that August 3rd card in BMO Stadium in Los Angeles. It'll be offered on pay-per-view on multiple platforms, ESPN Plus, DAZN, all that type of stuff. So y'all be able to, go ahead and see if you can purchase that pay-per-view or whatnot. If you're able to have the chance to, check it out. Now, want to go into what happened, yesterday, last night, going off of the main event there at Big Time Boxing USA on the Zone, Salida Promotions fight card, Little Caesars Arena in Detroit. You had Claressa Shields there against Vanessa Joanisse for the WBC Heavyweight Championship. There, his first fight for Claressa Shields in the heavyweight division. Of course, she had been the undisputed champion at middleweight and at super welterweight, but was going from middleweight in their last bout to heavyweight in this bout against Vanessa Joanisse. And a number of people were like kind of saying like, hey, her, getting up to weight, maybe it'll kind of like have a little bit of a difference there as far as like her power or whatever it is. And she was going in there saying that she was going to be, getting a knockout. She would have a lot more power behind her punches and that type of thing. And well, it was more about, Joanisse being there right in front of her, which you don't necessarily want to do in any sense there. And she got two-pieced up to go down to the canvas in that first knockdown. And after that was, basically it, so ended up being a second round TKO victory for Claressa Shields. She gets her third knockout win in her pro career. That's been 15 bouts, 15 wins. And so she is now WBC heavyweight champion and is what's that, like a 3-division world champion now, So well, actually no, it's 4 divisions because she was super welterweight champion, undisputed at what super middleweight, right? And she had been a super middleweight champion. So she's had multiple divisions where she's been a world champion there, and now is a heavyweight champion. There have been a couple of things that have kind of like stood out in reference to this particular event. One is, of course, with the result, her getting a stoppage victory there. So it's like, okay, now she's, I guess, knocking out opponents or whatever it is. That's one. And then two, how she kind of like views herself as far as like her standing, like overall, as far as like what she is, as far as like women's boxing is concerned, or as far as like the sport of boxing overall, or sports in general. So you have like a couple of things here. One, yes, she has a number of accomplishments in the ring, whether it's from the Olympics over to the pros, and she's had those accolades as far as like I mentioned before, multi-division world champion, multi-division undisputed champion, now being able to win a world title in the heavyweight division. But the thing about it is that when it comes to like basically women's boxing, so to speak, right? You gotta have it to where you compare it to like say other sports in general. And I'm not gonna say even men's sports. I'm gonna say women's sports, so to speak, right? Yep. So, like for example, women's tennis, women's volleyball, or women's basketball, right? Those particular sports pretty much like have a long-standing history, so to speak, when it comes to the sport in general. So you've seen a whole lot more athletes come up in the ranks, being able to develop themselves from a young age up to the point that they are now where they're pros. So you have a whole lot more depth in those particular sports than you do in women's boxing. So you can't. So if you like kind of like put up Claressa Shields towards like say for example a Venus and Serena Williams. Well, it's, of course Serena Williams, because you had what Claressa Shields was talking about after the fight, as far as like saying top athlete overall, all time, and things like that, where they mentioned like a Michael Jordan, they mentioned like Tom Brady, mentioned like Kobe Bryant or LeBron James or Serena Williams. And she said that she's pretty much like in that caliber. Okay. The thing about it is, like I said, level of competition, depth of competition. Look at the sports that all of those other athletes have been in. Look at, where you've been at. Do you have that many athletes in there or fighters within that particular division? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Like, I mean, I could say, like, for example, with the heavyweight division itself, there's 21 listed fighters currently on BoxRec in the heavyweight division in women's boxing. 21. There's like, what I would say, like, even in the super middleweight division where she kind of like started off her career, and you have like a number of notable fighters that are there within the super middleweight division. One of them is like, her like great friends and is a, been a, or is a current world champion herself in Franchon Cruz-Dezurn. 35 fighters overall in the super middleweight division. You can pretty much like go down the line. There's not really that many active fighters that are out there listed in these particular weight classes. So if you put yourself in the same light as like a Tom Brady, a Michael Jordan, a LeBron James, a Kobe Bryant, a Serena Williams, what was it? Right now, we got this whole thing with the Olympics, right? Simone Biles in gymnastics. Like I said, it's been, well established there, with these sports. So you put yourself in that particular light. I get it, but when it comes to like overall like sports, when it comes to depth and that type of thing, I necessarily can't accept it. Like I can't, like, because here's my thing with Claressa Shields right now, right? She won the title. Okay, great. Now what's next for Claressa Shields? What, like seriously, what's next for Claressa Shields? Like, I had the same, some people may have had the same question a couple of years ago after she defeated Savannah Marshall for the undisputed middleweight championships. Because, going into that fight, Savannah Marshall, she was the only one to defeat Claressa Shields in the amateurs. So she'll probably do it again here in the pros. Well, Claressa Shields pretty much like scored a unanimous decision over Savannah Marshall there a couple of years ago. So even at that particular point, it was like, what else is out there for Claressa Shields to do in the sport of boxing? Why? Because back then, there probably wasn't that much around there for Claressa Shields. So here we are once again, and you have a heavyweight division with only, like I said, 21 overall fighters in that division. So what can she do at this point?
You know what? First of all, if you're not promoting yourself, then something's wrong with you. All right. So I do applaud her for always promoting herself. And you know, in our group, for me, I would say I just don't like how she just does it loudly, and forgive me, not necessarily with the class that I would like for her to have in the promotion of herself. Since she can't broke on the scene, she's always loud and proud. I get it, because she's just trying to draw attention to herself. But for me, it's how you do things, right? But nevertheless, that's how she does it. It's working for her, so kudos to her. But I think you just explained it perfectly right now in your diatribe right there. Look at women's tennis, right? Would it be Serena Williams or Venus, sister, right? And you just, like you spoke about, the depth of tennis. So how many rivals did Serena have throughout her career? Many different people were in the top 10. There was also a battle to be number one, but there's always depth. So in women's tennis, you always had at least 4 to 5 people at least challenging each year for a major title, whether it be Wimbledon
Mhm.
or U.S. Open, Australia Open, stuff like that, right? So when you flip that, and on top of that, there's so many different eyes that were on women's tennis, right? So and women's boxing is probably now, you can argue at an all-time high, probably so, but the amount of eyes that are on women's boxing, and like you said, the depth of women's boxing. And is there any natural rivals that she's had? No, probably not.
Nope.
Other than Penny Marshall, and she took care of that, right?
Yep.
But once again, you go back to the general depth of women's boxing. It's not deep, and like when we look at once again another individual sport like tennis, Venus and Serena, they both had not just battles against themselves, but against other players within tennis, right? And they were true.
Mm-hmm.
They got pushed. They got pushed to greatness, and there's no one necessarily to push Claressa to greatness like this in that regard. And why? Because the sport is just not that deep, and because it's not that deep, there's not that much attention on women's boxing. So like I said in the group, if you were to rate down all her accomplishments, the gold medals and the weight class, the championships and stuff like that, and not put a name on it, looks great, looks real great. But then when you dive into it and reveal that name and reveal the amount of exposure and attention on the sport, it gets minimized. It's a shame, but it is what it is, right? So like you said, there's no true depth in women's boxing to help her define her greatness, and that's where it's at. But once again, if you're not promoting yourself, then something's wrong with you. So yeah, I get that. For me, it's just how she does that, just kind of loud and something else. So
Yeah, and she had like a little bit of a point when she talked about that, is that usually there'll be people that kind of like say or disagree with all that, and that she doesn't really really care that much about it. But that's kind of interesting, given that in the week leading into this particular fight, it was coming off of what happened over in Tampa there with Amanda Serrano, and Amanda Serrano's PR team making a post that had a little bit of a thing on there that referred to Amanda Serrano as the greatest woman of all time. But and that kind of, tipped off of Claressa Shields there for a little bit. So she had been talking about that for a couple of days. But yeah, the thing is, like I mentioned before, when it comes to, other sports, particularly with other, like women's sports, so to speak. So, and I point to tennis. You could say, with women's basketball, some people could like come up with maybe who they feel is like the greatest women's basketball player of all time, or whatever it is, like whether it's like a Cheryl Miller, or like a Lisa Leslie, or something like that, or of course, where they talk about, now what's going on now in women's basketball. But at least with those sports, you have an extended history behind them. So it's like you could say they've had a number of athletes that have competed up to the point where you could have that particular conversation, and you have like a number of either fellow athletes or fellow competitors, like for example in tennis, or you have fellow rivals in basketball that say, hey, you know what, this is what they did against their counterpart, or whatever it is. But as you mentioned, there with Claressa Shields, she really doesn't have that rival, so to speak, right? So the only one that kind of like was brought up, she ended up having a unanimous decision there. You know what I mean? So when she like kind of like puts herself up there with the Tom Brady, with the like I said, with the LeBron James, Serena Williams, Kobe Bryant, or who else you could bring up, at least with them, you would know about other athletes that were their rivals, and how those people that are at the top of the list, how they performed against their rivals. Like even like within the sport of boxing itself, who do they bring up? Floyd Mayweather Jr., right? What did he do against his rivals? Beat them all.
yep.
He beat them all. But at least with those fighters, they have a history behind them themselves. The Manny Pacquiao's, the Miguel Cotto's, the Ricky Hattons, the Oscar De La Hoyas, the Diego Corrales, the Jose Luis Casillas. Like, people could name that. With Claressa Shields, what do you have? You have a Savannah Marshall. You have like a Franchon Cruz-Dezurn, but who else will they bring up? That's the question. Who else would they bring up to say, hey, this is, who they say that they kind of like compare it to? You know what I'm saying? Because she's already had what was it? Like, say for example, like a Hannah Gabriel's or a Christina Hammer. Like, is that who they're going to bring up when it comes to Claressa Shields and overall? I'm not sure. Shout out to Mrs. Just doing the building. Shout out to you, of course. You were able to link up there over in Newark for that fight card there with Shakur Stevenson and Artem Harutyunyan. There, peace and love to you, and y'all be sure to support Just Do Boxing over here on YouTube. And you got Brother Steph in the building checking in, man. Salute to you, man. But yeah, that was my thing there with Claressa Shields is she's able to have this accolade, being a world champion there in the heavyweight division. But now the question is, like it was a couple of years ago, what's next for Claressa Shields in boxing? That's the thing about it. Like, people can't like say, oh, here's a fighter, that's coming up that's done a whole lot, up to this point of her professional career, and she should be ready to, face Claressa Shields. The most talk that we've had in reference to Claressa Shields and any type of quote unquote rival is multiple divisions below her. And I'm like, come on. Like, even in the conversation, the initial conversation that they've had between each other, they weren't going to face each other at that particular point. Because we're talking about someone that has competed at super middleweight or middleweight at the very lowest, super welterweight. Debut is pretty much at super middleweight, fought at middleweight, and now is a heavyweight champion. And the biggest quote unquote rival, so to speak, from a talking perspective, comes from someone that has held titles or currently hold titles, so to speak, at super featherweight. So come on, what are we doing here? What are we doing? So go ahead.
I think as Kevin May says all the time, it is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is.
But I think for Claressa, not her fault, but it's just like I said, we're just not a depth in women's boxing for at this point in order to prove her greatness. So I think the best thing for her to do is to take that Amanda Serrano outlet. And what I mean by that, she's already started with, doing the MMA fights and stuff like that. Because at one point, Serrano said that before Jake Paul came along, she made more money in MMA than in boxing, right?
Yeah.
So I think that Claressa should probably just keep forward on that path, and focus on trying to become more of a domestic product, not just boxing, but I'm talking about commercials, endorsements, stuff like that. At this point, does she have the greatest resume in boxing? Of course she does. That's easy to see, and it's pretty much undisputable. But what's next for her in boxing? That's a big question mark. So what are you doing meanwhile? Make money, man. Make money.
Yeah.
How to do it? It's going to be MMA.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I might, chop it up with, her promoter there, Demetri Salita of Salita Promotions, that, held that fight card there, Big Time Boxing USA at the Little Caesars Arena in Detroit, to see if there, maybe some other plans there for Claressa Shields currently. I know that there was like another, heavyweight fighter, on that particular card, but, she was like also, I think, included in, what was that? all women's pay-per-view that happened a couple of years ago. That was, what was it? If I'm not mistaken. Oh no, that was 3 years ago where they had that all women's pay-per-view and whatnot, or something like that. Danielle Perkins was also on this fight card. So I don't even know if like Danielle Perkins would like kind of be, there as a challenger for Claressa Shields. As I mentioned a couple of days ago, like in the chats, right? If you go into BoxRec right now, and like say for example, you go on the BoxRec right now, you could look up Claressa Shields. You could go on Claressa Shields' page on there, and where she has it for a pro record, it has division heavyweight, and then it'll show the ranking there, and it'll show the world ranking. It shows her at number 1 of 21 fighters that currently say that they're active. 1 of 21. If you click on that, you'll be able to see those 21 fighters that are currently competing in the heavyweight division. Check out the records of all of those fighters there in the heavyweight division, and that'll show you another thing in reference to depth there in the heavyweight division for women's boxing. Like, what else? What else can you do? What else can you do? So for Claressa Shields, it probably will have to be, like you said, competing in MMA, PFL, Professional Fighters League once again, until maybe something else opens up in boxing. But that remains to be seen. All right. Other thing I wanted to get into, that was on ESPN Plus, part of the Queensberry Promotions card at the O2 Arena there in the UK. We had a heavyweight bout with Joyce-Chisora versus Joe Joyce. And, going into this bout, man, I thought this one was going to be something to where this might be the last bout for Joyce-Chisora. And, with the first few rounds or so, maybe it looked like that, but there was something about Joe Joyce that wasn't necessarily all too good. And that was just him just kind of like going through the motions, so to speak, as far as like throwing punches, 1 or 2 or whatever it is, and just throwing a lot of arm punches. And this is a guy that initially came in there as quoted as the juggernaut and had, up to the fight, the 2 fights that he had against Zhang, right? He was like undefeated, pretty much like all but like I think what it was, one of his fights that he had as a pro ended in knockout. Up to the point where he fought Zhang the first time. He ended up stopping Joseph Parker in 2022 and had all the momentum going in there. He was the WBO interim heavyweight champion. And then he went up against Zhang in that first bout and pretty much got pieced up like how he pieced up Daniel Dubois when those 2 fought. So that ended up being a stoppage. Then he ran it back with Zhang. And then we all saw what happened there with that one, man. And that was probably one of the knockout of the year candidates there in 2023 when Zhang caught him with the right hook and just flattened him. You know what I'm saying? So he ended up having that. Then he had one fight here in March against Cash Ali. And even in that one, I didn't necessarily watch it, but he ended up getting a stoppage victory. I guess it's confirmed that it was like a full 10 rounds before he ended up getting a knockout. That should have been a message right there, right? And shout out to Lance Meyer in the building there, man. Hey, Styles make fights, yeah. Hey, man, listen. Hey, yeah, you know what I'm saying? And Steph says, gas by the first round. Joyce should be weighing 266 pounds. Yeah, 220. 220 at 6'6". I don't know, man. He ain't never been anywhere close to even 250. pretty much since 2018. But like him in his last couple fights, especially in his second fight against Lei Zhang, he was there around 280, above 280. That's crazy. Like you can't be around 280, 285. They're at like 6'6", man. Like that ain't gonna work. So he was there around like 280 against Derek Chisora. And even with all of that added weight, he didn't have like anything behind his punches. So with that being said, that kind of like gave Derek Chisora a little bit of a chance. And I said that, midway through the fight, I said, listen, Derek Chisora only has a chance here because there's nothing behind the punches of Joe Joyce. You know what I'm saying? I pretty much like said that. Let me see if I'll pull up the quote on this joint, man, because I had, did like a round by round, pretty much like a round by round analysis of the fight. But I said, by the third and fourth round, right? You seen like Chisora was landing those right hands, and that was the only thing that Chisora had was a right hand. He wasn't like throwing no jabs or nothing like that. And I said, the reason why it looks like Chisora may still have a shot in this bout is because Joyce has nothing behind his punches. Arm punching through the duration of the bout so far from Joyce. And that was pretty much like after the 7th round. And then in the 8th round, Joyce had Chisora. He had him with a left hook, had him stumbling on the ropes. But then Joyce couldn't take advantage, go off that momentum and get a knockdown there before the end of the 8th round. And then the 9th round happened. And Joyce still got too comfortable. And then Chisora just ended up just doing the right hand thing, and he just caught him in the perfect spot. Bam! And floored Joe Joyce. And I was like, oh no. And that pretty much, at least through the scorecards, that pretty much sealed it for Derek Chisora, as the judges pretty much like, they pretty much like had it for Chisora off of that, so to speak. They had a unanimous decision in favor of Derek Chisora there, and I guess those last few rounds pretty much was the difference there, man. Lance Meyer says Chisora had impeccable head movement. I was impressed with how busy he was. Well, he, even with that, like he was doing the head movement and that type of stuff, but even with the punches that were landed by Joe Joyce, they, like I said, they had nothing behind them. So, to be honest, Derek Chisora wasn't really in that much of a, he wasn't in that much trouble, it looked like. Even though it felt like Joe Joyce was, landing more of the punches and everything like that, it wasn't like he had much behind those punches in comparison to what Chisora was doing just with the right hand. You know what I'm saying? So it's like Joe Joyce basically got beat with one hand. That's crazy, man. He got beat with one hand, man. Yeah, like it was it was almost like a peekaboo style that Derek Chisora had, so to speak. Kind of like crouching behind his arms, like something like that, almost like an Archie Moore type of thing, whatever it is. But it apparently worked for Derek Chisora, and he ended up getting a decision victory over Joe Joyce. And so it's like he says he has a couple more fights left. That he's going to have at least one fight here in the interim, and then have another fight, I think, over in Africa, and then that'll be it there for Derek Chisora. He says I think he's going to have a fight in his home in Zimbabwe before he finally calls it quits. So he's going to try to have 50 pro bouts in his professional career, and then that'll be it for him. But yeah, to get that win over Joe Joyce, I just didn't expect that at all, man. Any thoughts on that, Terrell?
Yeah, what's funny, I'm gonna put a boxing academic on this one. I didn't get to see the fight. But no, but other than that, I'm very familiar with both fighters, especially with Del Boy, who's been a tough veteran of the sport, and in the sense of a gatekeeper, right? Who
Mm-hmm.
hang around and just doesn't go away, as we see here, right? And I remember we guys were chatting about the fight in the group, right? And if you guys told me that that Del Boy won the fight, I was like, wow, I was surprised to hear that.
Yeah.
Even right now, I'm sitting looking at some highlights right now of the fight. A pretty good fight from what I can tell. A lot of back and forth, no lows in action as far as what I can see. But even going to the fight, I thought that George Joyce definitely would have won this in a sense of going away with a good decision on this, but that didn't happen, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, even look at the fight right now, look at some highlights. The size difference is so apparent. I mean, Del Boy's not small; he's not small, but George Joyce always
Right.
small in that regard. But once again, that right hand over and over and over landing on Joyce in that regard. The juggernaut, that's what we call him. But
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, is Joe Joyce dead? What his loss to Spain back to back like that, getting stopped, and even this, is he dead? And what I mean by that, does that relegate him to gatekeeper status? Is there a comeback for him? And we look back, we look now at Dubois, right? When he beat Dubois,
Mm-hmm.
and I think since when he beat Dubois, and who else beat Dubois on top of that after that? You recall?
Alexander Usyk.
Yeah, yeah, and even that, and that where I know the controversy in that fight right there, right? And in that point, after the Usyk loss, Dubois look he's like left for dead, and now look at him now
Yeah.
as a belt
Yeah.
in a commanding position, and going to a highly publicized fight against Joshua. So
Yep.
is Joe Joyce dead? Maybe, but this is definitely not a good look at all, and everything. So, I mean, it's just not a good look. But I don't know where does he go from here? Keep fighting. He has a name, of course. Has
Mm-hmm.
uh, he's a marketable fighter with a style, things like that. So, but I'm just shocked. I'm shocked and met by everybody, like everybody else on this one.
Yeah. And the thing about it is like with Joe Joyce, I think Frank Warren kind of like hinted at it. It was like he doesn't necessarily know like where he'd be able to fit Joe Joyce at this particular point. I mean, I do have an idea, and I kind of like suggested it sometime after this fight for Joe Joyce. But it would require, I guess, a Turkey Al Sheikh or something like that. And it would require probably another 5v5 with Queensberry and Matchroom. Um, and it would involve Joe Joyce versus Deontay Wilder. You have Joe Joyce. He gets this like loss. He was favored in this fight. I don't know if it was like very significantly, but he was still favored in this fight against Derek Chisora. And he ended up having this happen to him. So have him go up against Deontay Wilder, who's coming off of a stoppage loss. So you can have that if you're gonna have another Queensberry versus Matchroom 5v5. Add that as part of the thing there, for part of the event there. They said, after what happened, even though Matchroom basically got swept, that they said that they would do it again. So if you're gonna have another one, go ahead and have that. Maybe just have it for December or something like that. You know what I'm saying? In December, 5v5, you'd have, Deontay Wilder there versus Joe Joyce. Maybe that would be the most logical fight for both fighters. Now for Derek Chisora, like I said, I have no idea what other fight he could have at this particular point before he has his farewell fight over in Zimbabwe as he plans to have there, I guess, later in his career. So it just made for this heavyweight division kind of like to be kind of like jumbled up a little bit. because Joe Joyce was like ranked number 10 in the IBF, or number 14 or so in the WBO, as high as number 8 in the WBC. Now he has his loss. You pretty much could knock him off of those rankings there, altogether for all three of those organizations. So that that makes it a really, really big setback there for Joe Joyce to kind of like have this loss. And the thing about it is too with Joe Joyce, after the fight, he just acted like oh, it's a close fight. It was an honor to be in the ring with Joyce-Chisora and all that type of stuff. It was almost like he wasn't necessarily that much invested in the results of the scorecards, because some people felt like Joe Joyce, even with the knockdown that he suffered, they felt like he still won the fight, but didn't necessarily go in his favor, and he was just kind of like conceded to it. So, and I don't know, man. I don't know. Now, given the amount of I guess feedback from this particular fight, maybe they run it back. I don't know. But outside of that, I really don't see that many options for either fighter in the heavyweight division at this point. So we'll see, what the plans are that, maybe Frank Warren would have for each of those fighters here later on down the line. So that's what I had on that fight. Of course, we're getting ready for what's happening here on Saturday, of course, with the fights at BMO Stadium there. The first Riyadh season card in the U.S., headlined by Terence Crawford versus Israil Madrimov for the WBA and WBO interim super welterweight titles. And, of course, a number of fights there that are going to be part of the undercard, too. So definitely looking forward to that. Hopefully we have more content here on the channel in reference to what's going to be happening over at the Entertainment and Sports Arena on August 3rd. Trying to see if I can get in contact with some of the fighters that are involved in that card, hopefully within these next couple of days. So if I do that, y'all be sure to be able to check that out, whether it's here on the YouTube channel or on the Boxing Source page on Instagram, because I think they are trying to see about arranging to have like Instagram live interviews with a number of those fighters as part of that card on August 3rd at the Entertainment and Sports Arena. So you do have that. We'll still have the midweek report on Wednesday, scheduled for 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. But big thanks for everyone that has been listening live here, whether it's through YouTube. We're also now on Rumble. For those that have Rumble accounts, you'll be able to check us out on Rumble and also on Twitch. Just started up a channel on Twitch, so hopefully we have be able to build an audience on Twitch as well. But big thanks for Brother Terrell here, of course, for being part of this live discussion. Anything here that you have to close out?
No, just I probably missed it, but your reaction to the Canelo Berlanga pairing up in September 14th, my birthday, by a small fact. Just more what's expected from Canelo. No, we're good, because if it ain't Canelo Benavidez, I don't care about it at this point now. So there you go.
Feel you. Yeah, feel you. So yeah, man. Canelo Berlanga, September 14th, y'all. We need to do this. Me, I'm actually looking forward to what's happening in the following week, September 21st, with Anthony Joshua versus Daniel Dubois. And I'm just putting it out there, at least for right now. For that particular fight, I'm planning on being there, whether it's getting a ticket, getting a fight ticket, or covering the fight. I'm going to be there. So September 21st, Joshua versus Dubois, IBF Heavyweight Championship. Yeah, Wembley Stadium. Yeah, I'm going to be there. So y'all look forward to the coverage for that particular event here on the Boxing Source. We're gonna have some stuff in reference to that, and I'm really excited about that. That would be first card to that I'll be over in the UK for. Usually, like, you know, boxing fans here in the States, you've seen the atmospheres that they've had over in the UK for a number of those big fights. So, yeah, I want to at least, you know, one time be able to experience something like that. So I said, you know what? Let me see if I could, you know, go to this one. So, yeah, that's what I'm working towards there.
That's good, doctor. That's good shit, you big doctor.
Oh man, you know, salute to my guy Bruce Gas, Boxing Jazz, and more. Of course, you know, he has his great channel also. You check him out for, you know, live reaction to some of the fights. He has interviews on there. Talks about multiple topics, not just with boxing, not just with jazz, but, you know, also other topics as well there on his YouTube channel. Here he's coming up at the pretty much at the end of this particular podcast. Has been over 2 hours here for this particular episode of the Boxing Source podcast. Of course, it'll be available on demand through YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, hopefully. It says trivia. It has trivia tomorrow night. A number of people, I'm just here to say, a number of people are having trivia for you know what they're doing, whether it's on YouTube or on X, Twitter, whatever it is, man. Be sure to look forward to that. What's going on Bruce Gas YouTube channel tomorrow. So for those that, you know, are on YouTube, you'll be able to check that out. But that's it for this particular episode of the Boxing Source podcast. So of course, we have our next episode on Sunday, where we're going to assess what's going to be happening there at BMO Stadium. Also, hopefully, I'll be covering what's going to happen over in DC there, the Entertainment and Sports Arena. Want to see what's happening with Jordan White, as he has headlines another bout there at the Entertainment and Sports Arena. So we'll see how that goes. When more news comes up, we'll see if we have a little bit of a take on that here on the Boxing Source channel. For those who haven't done so already, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell to let people know when things are going down here at the Boxing Source. And, that's it for me, man. I'll catch y'all later. Peace out.